The French writer Pierre Boulle has an interesting story called Miracle. And that story has been written many years ago. But what happened in this story is applicable to us today. And this story is about one pastor named Mantua. That pastor was a good pastor, excellent theologian, and brilliant speaker. He has been serving in the church for a few years already, and more people wanted to come to his church to listen his inspiring sermons. And one day, he was preaching a sermon about the miracle. And in his sermon, he said that miracles happen in our lives. And he pointed out that the foundation of a miracle is the person's faith. So miracle cannot happen without faith. If you believe, everything is possible. And the sermon was so inspiring that after the sermon, his friend, who was a medical doctor, Dr. Favre, came to his office and he said, "You preached a perfect sermon. That was so inspiring." Dr. Favre did not believe in God. And Pastor Mantua asked him a question. "Did I convince you to believe in God?" He said, "Yes and no. From one side, your words were very powerful. But from other side, I'm a medical doctor. And in my practice for all my years being as a doctor, I have never had a case when a person was healed from the incurable illness. So if that would happen in my practice, I would believe that God really exists." And then he added, "There is a lady in your church. She comes to your church regularly and she loves you your sermons. After your sermon, she approached me and she gave me a letter with her request. That request was to heal her son. And Dr. Favre explained to Pastor Mantua that her son, whose name was Jan, he lost his sight at the war. And he said that from medical point of view, it is impossible to heal him. So we tried to do many things, but we could not help him. But what is more, he not only lost his sight at the war, after this injury, his mind became crazy, so he became out of his mind. But that lady believes that if you, pastor, pray for her son will be healed." And Dr. Favre said, "From my point of view, it is incurable illness and no hope for John to be healed." And then he left. After some time, that lady came to the pastor's office and she said, "Pastor, I want you to pray for my son. I know that it maybe not the appropriate request, but if you won't pray for him, who can help him else? Please pray for him. Please heal him." And Pastor Mantua didn't know what to answer. He just preached about the miracles. He just preached about the faith, that if you have faith, everything is possible. But from other side, Dr. Favre explained him that this case is hopeless. It is no hope to heal that young man. And he didn't know what to answer, and in his mind was a storm. What do I do? How do I say here? No, I just preached about the faith and the miracle. And how do I say here yes? And then he said, "My sister, I will pray for your son, but you have to give me a promise, one condition. When I pray for your son, and if nothing will happen, and your son will not be healed, you will not be disappointed with God and with me." You know, miracle happens, but we don't know the will of God. And when that lady heard these words, her face started to shine. Her eyes filled with a hope that this Pastor Mantua can pray for her son, and her son will be healed. So they kneel down, and they started to pray, and Pastor Mantua started to ask God to heal her son. And when he finished his inspiring prayer, the lady said, "Now, Pastor, stretch out your hand and touch his blind eyes and say, 'See the light,' because Jesus did so." When Pastor Mantua heard these words, he cursed himself that he agreed to pray for this young man. But it was too late to step back, so he stretched out his hand, he touched the blind eyes, and he said, "See the light." And suddenly, amazing miracle happened. This young man opened his eyes and he started to see. And he exclaimed, "I can see." So his sight was completely restored, but not only his sight, his mind became right. Mother could not hold the tears. Son could not hold the tears. They started to cry and hug each other, praise Pastor Mantua, praise God for that miracle, because that was amazing and unbelievable miracle. Very soon, the story about this miracle spread around the town, around the nearby villages, and people started to stream to this church with all sorts of different illnesses, curable and incurable, asking Pastor Mantua to pray for them. Hundreds of times he prayed for all these sick people, and never again miracle happened. Never again God answered to his prayer, and he started to be doubtful. And he came to that lady and John, and he said, "Are you sure your son was blind? Are you sure that your son was out of his mind?" And she said, "Yes. And because of your prayer, God healed him." He went to Dr. Favre and he asked Dr. Favre, "Are you sure that it was an incurable illness?" Dr. Favre, said yes. And not only myself, all my colleagues will agree that it was impossible to heal him. But because you prayed, and now Dr. Favre confessed, "I believe in God because I saw myself that miracle was not only for him, that miracle was for me. I believe in God." But Pastor Mantua, disbelief grows more and more and more. He could not settle on what has happened. He could not accept that through his prayer that miracle happened in the life of John. So he wrote a letter to the high organization, it's similar like our general conference, explaining the situation and waiting for the answer. He hoped that the answer will be that that was not a miracle. And when he received the letter from the high authorities, and in that letter was stated, that was a miracle. And when he received that letter, he ran away from his church, and he couldn't accept. And he said, "How miserable I am. I could not believe that God did that miracle. I could not accept that through my prayer, that young man was healed." And he refused to believe in God and in his power. People wrote thousands of books about faith. People preached thousands of sermons about faith. Even the Bible gives us a definition. What is faith? Now, faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. But what is disbelief? You know what? Gospel of John gives us the answer to this question. I'm inviting you to open Gospel of John chapter 12, verses 37 and 40 to 43. 37 to 43. Gospel of John chapter 12, verses 37 to 43. Gospel of John chapter 12, from verse 37. Even after Jesus had performed so many signs in their presence, they still would not believe in him. This was to fulfill the word of Isaiah the prophet, Lord, who has believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For this reason, they could not believe, because, as Isaiah says elsewhere, he has blinded their eyes and hardened their hearts, so they can neither see with their eyes nor understand with their hearts, nor turn, and I would heal them. Isaiah said this because he saw Jesus' glory and spoke about him. Yet at the same time, many even among the leaders believed in him. But because of the Pharisees, they would not openly acknowledge their faith, for fear they would be put out of the synagogue. For they loved human praise more than praise from God. Why is chapter 12 in the Gospel of John is very important? Do you have any idea? Faith. Good answer. What do you know about the Gospel of John? How it's structured? Those who went through the John on Wednesday Bible night should remember that. Because Gospel of John, chapter 1 to chapter 12 is a one part. And Gospel of John, chapter 13 to 21 is the second part. So first part is focusing on the miracles that Jesus performed. And the second part on Jesus' glory. So John coming to the conclusion of the first part, saying that they still would not believe in him after so many miraculous signs and miracles Jesus performed. My question is why? It's interesting if we go, and I'm inviting you to go through the few Bible verses in the Gospel of John, chapter 1 to chapter 12, and see what John himself writes about their faith. So, for example, chapter 2, verse 23. Chapter 2, verse 23. Gospel of John, chapter 2, verse 23. This is what it says here, chapter 2, verse 23. Now, while he was in Jerusalem at the Passover festival, many people saw the signs he was performing and, what does it say there? Believed in his name. So in chapter 2, John makes the bold statement. People believed in Jesus. Let's go to chapter 7. Chapter 7, verse 31. Chapter 7, verse 31. Chapter 7, verse 31. And this is what we can read here. Still, many in the crowd believe in him. They said, when the Messiah comes, will he perform more signs than this man? Again, chapter 7, he makes this statement. Many people believed in the crowd in him. Let's go to chapter 8, verse 30. One page forward. Chapter 8 and verse 30. Even as he spoke, many believed in him. Again, Apostle John is making this statement, many believed in him. Okay, let's go to chapter 10. Chapter 10, verse 42. So you can see through all these chapters, he repeatedly makes the same statement that people believed in Jesus. So chapter 10, verse 42. Chapter 10, verse 42. And in that place, many believed in Jesus. So things happened in the different places, and in different places, people believed in Jesus. Okay, chapter 11, verse 45. Chapter 11, verse 45. Therefore, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did, believed in him, because it was extremely big miracle to raise Lazarus from the dead. And we can see here, he added not just people believed, Jews believed in Jesus' name. And chapter 12, chapter 12, verse 11. Chapter 12, verse 11. Again, we can read here, for an account of him, many of the Jews were going over to Jesus and believing in him. We can see that throughout first part of the Gospel of John, John making this statement that people believe in Jesus. But when he comes to the end of this first part of his Gospel, he makes an opposite conclusion. He's saying that they still would not believe in him. How can it be? We just see that they believe, but when he makes a conclusion, he makes a totally opposite statement. They still would not believe in him. We need to understand how they believed. They believed, but with reservation. They believed, but not to the full extent. They believed, but with caution. They did not trust Jesus 100%. So when Jesus called, for example, one of the apostles, for example, Apostle Peter, he said, "Follow me." What did Peter do? He left everything and followed Jesus. That is a complete commitment. That is a discipleship. Those people in chapter 1 to chapter 12 who mentioned that they believed, yes, they believed in the signs, they believed in the miracles, but to completely commit to follow Jesus, it is a little bit too much. So we can find that people ready to follow Jesus when it is profitable for them, when it gives them some benefits. But as soon as Jesus started to preach about the cross, about glory on the cross, they scratched their heads and they said, that is a little bit too much for us. And we can read here in chapter 12 that they wanted to follow, but they were afraid of the Pharisees, because they loved the praise from men more than praise from God. So answering the question, what is unbelief? The first point is, it profitable for me to follow Jesus? You know, today you go to our community and you ask people, do you believe in God? Many would say no. Many would say yes. And if you ask the second question, how do you believe in God? Or what does that mean for you to believe in God? They would answer, I just believe in my heart. So, do you do anything about that? Maybe you go to the church, maybe you pray regularly, maybe you read the Bible or spiritual literature. They would say, no, I'm too busy. That's the answer. That's our reality. But if people started to go slowly on that spiritual journey from the beginning, from 0 or -10, whatever they are right now, and starting progressing and start to read the Bible, started to develop the relationship with Jesus, it definitely will come to the point that they have to make a decision. And you probably met such people, and definitely I met in my ministry. You walk along with these people, and when you come to something that is challenging for them, could be anything, maybe state of death, maybe health reform, maybe question about the Sabbath, whatever. It can be a stumbling block, and they say, no, that's not completely profitable for me. It doesn't give me any benefits. I need to take my kids to the sport on Sabbath. Or I like my pork on the fork. Whatever. And that is a stumbling block. I believe, but, all the time, but, I'm not ready to follow Jesus to the cross. And remember, even in Gospel of John chapter 6, when he asked the people, told the people about the cross where he's heading, they departed from him. They stopped following him. He asked his disciples, do you want to leave me as well? Peter said, to whom we shall go? No, we wanted to follow you. So the first point is, if it is profitable for me to follow Jesus? And it can be a big stumbling block for many people. The second point is fear. Or, in other words, we can say, be ashamed of Jesus. And this is what happened to Peter. Even he dropped everything and followed Jesus, the moment came in his life when he was confronted, are you the disciple of Jesus? What did he answer? No. Not just once, 3 times. He said, no, I don't know that man. Fear and shame. He didn't want to associate himself with Jesus. When the conversation in your workplace or study place or with your neighbor comes to the topic, are you a Christian? How do you answer to this question? Yes, I go to church. But I don't want to really talk about this. Or you said, yes, I'm not only Christian, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist and I keep Sabbath. I like that example that Karen shared this morning. I don't want to put you on the spot, but yeah, it's a good example when she started the conversation and she led this person and explained him about what she believes in. And you know what? We may lose the friends or we may lose some neighbors to be on our side if we share with them who we are. But what is more important for us? Or who is more important for us? I wanted to tell you another story. That is a story happened in the Soviet Union, about one man. His name was Adam Fresorger. He was a pastor in one of the German villages in Soviet Union. A little bit of history. In 18th, 19th centuries, German people started to relocate to Russia because of the different trades. And they made the settlements along the big river Volga. A lot of German villages were settled there. And they had their churches, they had their Lutheran religion, Lutheran church, and they believed and went to the churches. So they were different from other Russian people who lived around. And they kept their traditions. But in 1922, when Stalin came to the power, he became a dictator, and he started to develop the network of the concentration camps, where he sent different people for the different reasons. And you probably heard about this agency, KGB. Yes, some of you who are old enough could remember these words, KGB. So that system existed from the beginning of the Soviet Union. It's called differently at that time, but the same system. So people from that system could randomly come to your time in those gloomy time 1930s and grab you, and your family may never see you again for any reason. So Adam Fresorger became a prisoner in one of these concentration camps. The reason for that was he was a pastor, and he was a German pastor. So they put him in a concentration camp, and historians said that during this time, 1930s, about 600,000 people were killed in those concentration camps. So it was very gloomy time, and people were afraid to say anything about the government, about any policies in the government. So that pastor, Adam Fresorger, ended up being in the concentration camp. And he was a very silent man. He didn't speak much, and he prayed silently. And if the conversation happens, he all the time talked only about the religious topics. He didn't talk about anything else, only the religious topics. He didn't have many friends, but one man in that camp was somehow like Pastor Fresorger, especially what he preached from the Bible. And one day that Adam Fresorger approached that man, and he took out of his pocket an old photo. And he said, "This is my daughter, my only daughter who I have in this world. My wife died a few years ago, and I kept this photo for 6 years since the moment that I was taken from home. And I know that I love her, and she loves me, and I know that she's waiting when I come back. I write her all the time letters, try to communicate with her, but I never received any letters from her. Maybe KGB is not allowing me to receive these letters, I don't know. But I'll continue to write the letters. So he shared his story with that man. About 6 months later, that man, by pure accident, saw a letter on the table. And in this letter, on the cover of this letter, it was not an ordinary letter, it was a special letter with a big seal from this KGB agency. And in the big letters, it was written, "Familiarize the prisoner Adam Froserger that his daughter repudiates from him." So that caught his attention. He took this letter, opened, and that was a application for repudiation. So he read that his daughter wrote this statement, "I am the daughter of Adam Froserger, disowned from my father. I ask official authorities cancel all relationship with my father. From this time I consider that he is not my father anymore." And when that man wrote this letter, he thought, oh, if Adam gets this letter, it will kill him, because he knew how he loved his daughter. And he didn't know what to do. He threw this letter into the furnace. And he kept silent. He didn't say anything to Adam or anyone else. But unfortunately, 6 months later, the same letter came to the camp again. And this time, prisoner Adam Froserger was familiarized that his daughter disowns him. When Jesus was dying on the cross, he saw your photo and my photo. He saw photo everyone. And he was saying, "This is my son. This is my daughter. And I love them. I love them so much that I come to the cross to die for them." In Gospel of Mark, chapter 8, Jesus is saying, "If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of him when he comes in his Father's glory with the holy angels." If I or you are ashamed of our Father and disowned like Peter disowned many years ago, saying, "I don't know who is he," when Jesus will come in his glory. That's a strong and very powerful statement. And when I read it, it became like fearful to me. He will be ashamed of me. Even after Jesus had done all these miraculous signs, they still would not believe in him, because it was not profitable for them, number one. It created a lot of problem to follow Jesus. And they didn't want to be ashamed. They didn't want to be in that situation. So they believed, but with some reservations. In the Gospel of Luke, there is a beautiful question that Jesus is asking everyone. And I would encourage you to ask this question throughout this week, to think about these words, to ask yourself, to try to be honest with yourself and answer this question. However, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth? When the Son of Man will come in his glory, will he find faith in my heart? Will he find faith in your heart? I encourage you this week to think about this question. I encourage you to pray about this question. And I encourage you to make this decision. This is what Jesus wants from all his followers. I will be faithful for you, Jesus, until the last breath in my life. Amen.